Okay, so basically in today's lecture I'll have to talk about the liner by barcode that is also related to the enzyme inhibition, right? So the first thing that is you have to know before moving forward to know about the liner by barcode, that what is the Michaelis-Menten equation, because you have to derive any kind of equation which is related to the enzyme mechanism. The one and only principal equation is the Michaelis-Menten equation. If you don't know what is Michaelis-Menten equation, then please check it out into my YouTube playlist. I already made a video regarding the Michaelis-Menten equation. How we usually have to derive the Michaelis-Menten equation. All these things are already available in my YouTube playlist. If you don't know, please check it out. So if you already know what is Michaelis-Menten equation, then I want to move forward. So the first thing that is the Michaelis-Menten equation is the V0 ratio of Vmax to concentration of S, that is the substrate concentration divided by Km plus S. Okay, so this is the simple Michaelis-Menten equation. Now you just have to do some derivation, that is 1 by V0 is equals to Km concentration of S and plus concentration of S divided by Vmax to concentration of S. Now we can write it in this way as well, that is Km is divided by Vmax to concentration of S plus concentration of S divided by Vmax to concentration of S. Okay, so now we can write it down in this way as well, that is Km by Vmax into 1 by concentration of S, that is the substrate, plus 1 by Vmax, right? Okay, so this is all about the 1 by V0. Now the things which you will have to know that to plot any graphical representation, you must have to know few things. Let's suppose this is our plot. Now in this plot, all of us will already know that this y-axis and this is x-axis, and this point is known as the O00 point. Okay. Now this is basically known as the intercept of the x-axis, right? And this point is also known as the intercept of the y-axis, or y-axis intercept. This is y-axis intercept. This one is the x-axis intercept. Okay. Now one more thing which you will have to know, that this portion, this is known as the slope of this graph, right? This portion is known as the slope. Okay. So this is y-axis, this one is y-axis, this one is the x-axis, and basically obviously this is the positive x-axis and this is the positive y-axis, but this one is the negative axis, right? This one is the negative, this one is the positive, again this one is the positive y-axis, this one is the negative y-axis. Okay, so I think up to this clear. Now the thing is that there is a formula to plot any graphical representation, that is y is equals to mx plus c. So this is the formula, y is equals to mx plus c. Over here the value of the y is 1 by v0, right? And the value of the m is km divided by vmax, right? And also the value of the x is 1 by concentration of S, and the value of the C is 1 by Vmax. From where I got this value, you can see over here that y. This one is the y, that is 1 by V0. This one is the m, that is km by Vmax, and this one is the x, value of the x, that is 1 by concentration of S is the substrate, and the value of the C is 1 by Vmax. So basically all this value I get from this Michaelis-Menten equation, right? Now I don't have to do anything, just I will have to put the value of the y, m, x and c in their proper appropriate position, right? So this point what I have said, that this point is also known as the intercept of the y-axis. On the other hand, this portion is also known as the c, right? This is also known as the C. Okay. Now you can see that the value of the y is 1 by v0. That means this is the value of the y-axis. That means the value of the y will be 1 by v0. And you can also see that the value of the x, that is 1 by concentration of x. That means the value of the x will be what? 1 by concentration of s. So the one thing is already clear in front of us, that we are basically going to represent a graphical representation in between the 1 by v0 and 1 by s. So basically this is the graphical representation in between 1 by v0 versus 1 by substrate concentration. So this is the graphical representation. Now you can see that the value of the m, this is m, and this m is also known as the slope. So basically m is denoting the value of the slope. So what will be the value of the slope? The value of the slope will be the km by gmax. Okay. Now finally we get the value of the y m x plus c. Now what we'll have to do? Now remember, I already mentioned that this point is known as the y-axis intercept and this point is known as the x-axis intercept. We got each and every value, but till now we don't know that what should be the value of the y-axis intercept and x-axis intercept. Now our next work to be find out the value of the y-axis intercept and the value of the x-axis intercept. You can see right now we are having the value of the y, that is the 1 by v0, and you can also see that we are having the value of the x, that is 1 by s, and we are also having the value of the c, that is 1 by vmax. So this is the value of the c will be 1 by vmax, right? And we are also having the value of the m, that is the slope, is km by vmax. So this will be the value of the m. Okay. Now what we should have to find out? We should have to find out the value of the y-axis intercept and the value of the x-axis intercept. To find out the value of the any intercept, just you have to remember that if you have to find out the y-axis intercept, let's suppose you will have to find out the value of the y-axis intercept. That time you should have to remember that the value of the m will be 0, right? The value of the m will be 0. So you will have to find out the value of the y, that means m into 0 plus c. Over here the value of the x will be 0, right? If you will have to find out the value of the y-axis intercept, that time the value of the x-axis intercept will be 0. This point you should have to remember, right? So what should be the value of the y? The value of the y would be the c. So this is the value of the y-axis intercept, right? Okay. Now we already know what will be the value of the c. The value of the c will be 1 by vmax. 1 by vmax. That means you can say that the value of the y-axis intercept is to the 1 by vmax. Or we also can say that the value of the y-axis intercept will be the value of the c. That is also 1 by vmax. So everything is clear? Okay. Now we should have to find out the value of the x-axis intercept. Again, we'll have to use the same formula, that is I already mentioned that to find out the value of the any intercept, you should have to consider that another intercept value will be the 0. Now here I will have to find out the value of the x-axis intercept. That means the value of the y-axis intercept will be 0. That means the 0 is equals to m into x-axis intercept plus c. So what should be the value? The value should be the m into x-axis intercept plus c is equals to minus c, and the value would be the minus c by m. So this is the value of the x-axis intercept. Now we already know that the value of the c is 1 by vmax. That means you can write it down in this way: 1 by vmax is divided by the value of the m. The value of the m is km by vmax. Km divided by vmax. So what should be the value of the x-axis intercept? The value of the x-axis intercept will be the what? 1 by vmax into vmax by km, right? And obviously we should have to put the minus sign over here. and Vmax will be cancelled, and the x-axis intercept will be the minus 1 by km, right? Okay, so this is the value of the x-axis intercept. This is nothing. Just you have to remember one thing, that when you will have to find out the value of the y-axis intercept, that time you should have to consider the value of the x-axis intercept is 0. On the other hand, if you will have to find out the value of the x-axis intercept, that time you will have to consider the value of the y-axis intercept as 0. So from this formula, you can easily find out what should be the value of the x-axis intercept and what should be the value of the y-axis intercept. Now, you just have to put it down over here. That the value of the x-axis intercept will be what? The value of the x-axis intercept will be minus 1 by km, right? This will be the minus 1 by km. And the value of the y-axis intercept, the value of the y-axis intercept is just equals to the value of the c, that is already I mentioned 1 by Vmax, right? So there is not any changes in between the value of the y-axis intercept and the c value, because the value of the y-axis intercept is exactly equal to the value of the c, that is 1 by Vmax. So from all this derivation, right now we are having the value of the y, the value of the x, the value of the m, the value of the c, as well as the value of the y-axis intercept, and also we are having the value of the x-axis intercept. So we already done each and every one. Now we just have to see that how we will correlate in between the competitive, uncompetitive, and mixed inhibition by using this graphical representation. Okay. Now, if you people already know that what is the competitive inhibition, non-competitive inhibition, then it will be more easy to understand. And if you people don't know what competitive, uncompetitive, and mixed inhibition, uncompetitive inhibition, please check it out my YouTube playlist. There is already available a video related to the different mechanism of enzymatic. Right? Now, okay, so to make your concept more clear, I would like to discuss very short related to the different competitive inhibition mechanism. So if I talk about the competitive inhibition mechanism, then basically in case of competitive inhibition, there is a competition in between the substrate and the inhibitor to bind with the enzyme, right? So basically, enzyme will bind with its specific substrate, right? But if the substrate structural configuration and the inhibitor structural configuration is quite little bit similar, that time it's depend upon their concentration. If the substrate concentration is very high, that time substrate will go and bind with the active site of this enzyme, and if the inhibitor concentration is very high, that time due to the similar structural configuration with the substrate, the inhibitor will go and bind with this enzyme, which will not allow the substrate to bind with this enzyme. So basically, in case of competitive inhibition, there is a single binding site for both the for both the substrate and as well as for both the inhibitor. Okay, so if the substrate concentration is high, the substrate will go and bind with the enzyme, and the obvious enzyme substitution will go on. But if the inhibitor concentration is high compared to the substrate, that the inhibitor will go and bind with this enzyme, and it will stop the enzyme substrate reaction. Okay, so this is all about the competitive inhibition. So over here, the one thing is clear, that is that in case of competitive inhibition, the enzyme substitution is depends upon their affinity. This depends upon the affinity in between enzyme and substrate and in between enzyme and inhibitor. If the affinity of enzyme and substrate is quite lower than the affinity which is present in between enzyme and inhibitor, then an inhibitor will go and bind with this enzyme active site, and it will stop the enzyme substrate reaction. So wherever we'll have to talk about the affinity, one thing which you should have to remember, that affinity is always inversely related to the value of the Km, right? Affinity is always inversely related to the value of the Km. So the value of the Km is inversely proportional to the affinity, right? Affinity in between enzyme and substrate. Okay. So basically, in case of competitive inhibition, the value of the Km, what should be the value of the Km? The value of the Km will increase or Km will decrease. The value of the Km will always what? Increase, right? Because if Km value will get increased, only that time if Km value will get increased, that means what? The affinity will get decreased, right? If K, as the Km value is inversely proportional to the affinity, and if that time Km value will get increased, that means affinity will get decreased. That means in between enzyme and substrate, the affinity will be lower than the affinity which is present in between enzyme and inhibitor, right? That means the enzyme and inhibitor affinity will be higher, but enzyme and substrate affinity will be lower. Okay. So in case of competitive inhibition, the Km will get increased so that the affinity will get decreased. So that the affinity will get decreased in between enzyme and substrate, right? Okay. On the other hand, if you talk about the Vmax will be unchanged. Okay. Why Vmax will be unchanged? Because here we are talking about the affinity, right? We are not talking about the the reaction catalyzing activity. We are just talking about the affinity. That's why Km will change, but Vmax will remains unchanged because the substrate structural configuration and inhibitor structural configuration is quite similar. That's why the Km will get increased, but Vmax will remains unchanged, right? Okay, so now if we will have to talk about the non-competitive inhibition mechanism, then in case of non-competitive inhibition, simple, the name itself mentioned that there is not any competition in between enzyme and substrate. So the substrate having the different site to bind with the enzyme. On the other hand, the inhibitor also having the different site to bind with the enzyme. That's about this one enzyme. And this enzyme having two different sites, and one side is allotted for the binding with its proper substrate, and another side is responsible to bind with the inhibitor, right? As there is two different sites for inhibitor and substrate individually, that's why there is not any competition in between enzyme and substrate. That's why this kind of inhibition is known as the non-competitive inhibition. So in case of non-competitive inhibition, basically the Km value is unchanged, right? But the Vmax will get what? Vmax will get increase or decrease. Vmax will get decrease, right? Okay. So why Km will unchanged? Because here we are not talking about the affinity in between enzyme and substrate, and as well as the enzyme and inhibitor. Here we are just talking about their reaction catalyzing activity. So as this enzyme is having two different sites for inhibitor as well as for substrate, that's why in between inhibitor and substrate there is not any competition because two different sites is already there. That's why here we are not talking about the affinity, and as we are not talking about the affinity, that means we will not have to talk about the Km, and with this reason the Km will be unchanged. But here we are talking about the Vmax, that is the maximum velocity. Maximum velocity will be that decrease. So in case of competitive inhibition, Vmax will get decreased, but Km will be unchanged. Now, if we will have to talk about the not competitive, non-competitive, and right now we'll talk about the uncompetitive inhibition, right? Uncompetitive inhibition. So in case of uncompetitive inhibition, at the very first time, this one is in case of uncompetitive inhibition, there is also having two different sites. One side is allotted for the substrate and another side is allotted for the inhibitor, right? So in case of uncompetitive inhibition, also that directly there is not any competition, but having little bit competition in between inhibitor and substrate, and this competition is indirect. Though they are having, so though in this enzyme they are having two different sites, one is for the inhibitor and another one is for the substrate, but depending upon their concentration, either substrate will have to bind with this enzyme before the inhibitor, or if the inhibitor concentration is very high compared to the substrate, that time inhibitor will have to bind first with this enzyme, and then if inhibitor will get bind with this enzyme, then it will not allow the substrate to bind with its active site, right? It will not allow the substrate to bind with its active site. But if at the very first time the substrate if at the very first time the substrate will get bind, then there is a there is a chance to bind with the inhibitor as well, right? substrate will not going to change the structural configuration of the inhibitor binding site, but inhibitor can change the structural configuration of the substrate binding site. That means in case of uncompetitive inhibition, though they are having two different sites to bind with the inhibitor and substrate, but if the substrate concentration is very high, that then substrate will have to bind it to its active site before the inhibitor, right? But one enzyme substrate complex will form. That time inhibitor will come and bind with this inhibitor binding site. And as soon as inhibitor will bind with the enzyme substrate complex, that time the structural configuration of substrate binding site will get changed and the enzyme will release its substrate so that the enzyme substrate reaction will not able to proceed. Okay, so this is all about the uncompetitive inhibition. So in case of uncompetitive inhibition, basically the Km and Vmax, Km and Vmax will get Km will get decreased and Vmax will also get decreased, right? So here the Vmax will also get decreased, Km will also get decreased. So this is all about the uncompetitive inhibition. Now we will have to talk about the mixed inhibition. Mixed inhibition. If we will have to talk about the mixed inhibition, then in case of mixed inhibition, basically you can see that in case of mixed inhibition, we will have to see that Vmax will get decreased and Km will get increased, right? So this is the mixed inhibition. So basically in case of mixed inhibition, we will have to see both competitive as well as non-competitive inhibition. So this together is known as the mixed inhibition. So in case of non-competitive inhibition, you can see that the Vmax is decreased, and in case of competitive inhibition, you will see that the Km will get decreased. So in case of mixed inhibition, I already mentioned that Vmax will get decreased, Km will get increased. Now, if we will summarize to all this topic in a single table, then you can see that the variation of Km and Vmax, right? So what should be the variation of Km and Vmax? In one case, Km will get unchanged and Vmax. Km will get unchanged and Vmax will get decreased, right? And on the other hand, you can see that Km will get decreased and Vmax will also get decreased. And in other case, you can see that Km will get increased and Vmax remains unchanged, right? In other case, you can see that is the Km will get increased and Vmax remains what? Vmax remains. Let me check it out. Okay, so the last point will be Km will increase and Vmax will be decreased. Okay, so Vmax will be decreased. So basically, this is the mixed inhibition, and where the Km will get increased and Vmax will remain unchanged. Okay, so this will be the competitive inhibition, and where both Km and Vmax will get decreased. This will be the particular uncompetitive inhibition. And where the Km will not change, but the Vmax will get decreased, will be the non-competitive inhibition. So this is the main things which you should have to remember. In case of non-competitive inhibition, the Km will remain unchanged, and Vmax will get decreased because there is not any kind of competition in between substrate and enzyme. There is not any competition in between substrate and enzyme. That means we are not actually talking about affinity in between substrate and enzyme. As we are not talking about the affinity in between substrate enzyme or in between substrate or in between inhibitor and enzyme, that means we will not have to think about the Km value. But in case of uncompetitive inhibition, there is a affinity in between enzyme and substrate as well as enzyme and inhibitor. That's why in case of uncompetitive inhibition, Vmax will get decreased. In case of competitive inhibition, there is a competition in between enzyme and substrate. That means here also we are talking about the affinity in between enzyme and substrate as well as enzyme and inhibitor. So as we are talking about the enzyme and substrate, as we are talking about the affinity in between enzyme and substrate, that means we have to talk about the Km. So in case of competitive inhibition, as the affinity in between enzyme and substrate will get decreased, that means Km will get increased. As Km is inversely proportional to the enzyme affinity, right? So here the Km will get increased and Vmax will remain unchanged. In case of this inhibition, Km will get increased, it will remain unchanged, right? So this is the variation of Km and Vmax in case of different inhibition mechanism. Now I simply try to draw over here the graphical representation of the four inhibition mechanism. It is competitive, uncompetitive, and non-competitive. So let's suppose this is the competitive inhibition, and this is the uncompetitive inhibition, and this is the non-competitive inhibition, the mixed inhibition. So you can see that in case of competitive inhibition, if we draw a graph over here, let's suppose we draw a plot. Okay, so this is y-axis and this is x-axis, and the y from y equals to mx plus c, we already have the value of the y is 1 by v0. So this should be the 1 by v0, and the value of the x should be 1 by concentration of x. Okay, so the value of the x will become 1 by concentration of x. And what should be the value of the c? Value of the c will be the 1 by vmax, right? 1 by vmax. So this should be the value of the c, 1 by vmax. And we already know that the value of the y-axis intercept is equal to the value of the c, that is 1 by vmax. That means this should be the value of c and y-axis intercept, that is 1 by vmax, right? And this is the value of the x-axis intercept, and we already know the value of the x-axis intercept is minus c by m, and we know that this will be the minus 1 by km, right? So this will be the value of the x-axis intercept. That means the value of this portion will be minus 1 by km. Okay. Now we simply draw the graphical representation by seeing the value of the km and the vmax. So in case of competitive inhibition, what we know? In case of competitive inhibition, we know that the km will get increased, but the Vmax remains unchanged. As the km value will get increased, right? So look at very carefully. This is basically the positive, right? So plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, plus 5, plus 6. This is the plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4. Okay, this is the plus 5. But if we will have to move shift to the leftward, that means what? It should be the minus 1, minus 2, minus 3 in this way. Now, if we will have to increase the value of the km, whether we will have to shift to the rightward or we will have to shift to the leftward from its previous point. That is, the value of the km is already mentioned over here. This is the value of the minus 1 by km. Now, in case of competitive inhibition, we know that the value of the km will get increased. Okay, now you can see that minus 1 by km is our value. Now we think that the value of the km is right now 2. Okay, so it should be the minus 1 by 2, it should be minus 0.5. Now if we take km value is increasing, that means earlier it was 2, right now we are considering that the value of the km is 3, that means minus 1 by 3 is equal to minus 0.33, right? Now simply think that which one is bigger, that minus 0.5 is bigger or minus 0.33 is bigger. Obviously the minus 0.33 is larger than the minus 0.5. So you can see that this is this is minus 3, this is minus 2, this is minus 1. That means if you are moving rightward, in the rightward, that means you are shifting towards the 0, right? From negative to the positive. You are shifting towards 0 means what? You are actually shifting from negative to the positive way. That means if you are moving from minus 5 to minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, that means you are actually shifting your value from negative to positive. That means you are actually increasing your value. That means shifting rightward from the negative position is actually increasing the value of the km. Okay, so simply what you will have to do, you will have to increase your km value. Let's suppose over here I consider my new km will be in this point, and as the Vmax will remains unchanged, that means the y-axis intercept, that is the 1 by Vmax, we will not have to change the value of the Vmax, that means it will remain same, that is 1 by Vmax. So we'll have to draw our new graph like this way. So this is the graphical representation of competitive inhibition. Again, in case of competitive inhibition, the km value will get increased. As the km value will get increased, that means the value of the minus 1 by km will shift from left to the rightward as the value of the km is increasing. And as the value of the Vmax will not get changed, that means what? That means it will y-axis, the value of the y-axis will remain unchanged, and the graphical representation will be like this way. So if we will have to ask that what should be the graphical representation of competitive inhibition in case of line wave transport, then simply you will have to draw the as usual graphical representation, and then you just have to think that in case of competitive inhibition, what should be the value of the km and Vmax. And if you know that the value of the km will get increased, oh, that means it will shift from this point from leftward to the rightward, and as the Vmax will remains unchanged, that means the graphical representation will be like this. This is the very easy. So this is the competitive inhibition. So in case of uncompetitive inhibition, again nothing you will have to do. In case of uncompetitive inhibition, just again you will have to do the normal graphical representation. Right now I am not going to mention the value of the y-axis intercept and what is the value of the x-axis intercept, because already you people know that what should be the value of the y and y-axis intercept. And if you don't know, it is already available over here. This is 1 by g0, 1 by s, and minus 1 by km, and 1 by vmax. It will be remains same, right? Now the one thing which first strike in your mind, that in case of uncompetitive inhibition, the km value will get decreased and Vmax value will get increased. You can see over here the km value will get decreased, and Vmax value will be get increased. Sorry, Vmax value will also get increased. So this is in case of uncompetitive inhibition. That means if the Vmax value will get decreased, you can see that km value is increasing. That means what? Km value is increasing. That means again this graph have to shift from the leftward to the rightward. Let's suppose this should be the new km value. Sorry, over here the km value is decreasing. That means what? The km value is decreasing. That means graph will not shift from leftward to the rightward. Rather, it will have to shift from leftward to the more leftward. Okay, it will have to shift from this point to this point because km value is decreasing. Again, minus 1 by km. If you think that the value of the km is 2, that means minus 1 by 2 will be 0.5, and km value is decreasing. That means now we are considering the value of the km is 1. That means minus 1 by 1 equals to minus 1. That means you are shifting from minus 0.5 to 1 to minus 1. That means what should be a value? This is 0, 0 point, this is 0, this is 0, let's suppose this is 0, minus 0.5, and this is 0, minus 1, right? That means you are shifting this point to this point. That means you are shifting from leftward to more leftward, not rightward. As the km value is decreasing, that means if previously your point is there, you will have to shift more left because km value is decreasing. So the new point for km will be the this point. This is the minus 1 by km. New minus 1 by km, right? This is the previous 1 by km. This is the previous value of the minus 1 by km. Okay. Now you can see that the Vmax value is also decreased. Vmax value is also decreased. So Vmax value is decreased. That means what? 1 by Vmax. This point, the value of this point is 1 by Vmax. So as the Vmax value is decreasing, that means it will shift upward or left. Obviously, it will shift upward because you can see that Vmax value is decreasing. Consider that the value of the Vmax is 2. That means 1 by 2 is equal to 0.5. And Vmax value is decreasing. That means right now we are considering the Vmax value is 1. That means 1. That means previously it was 0.5 and right now it is, after decreasing, the Vmax value is only 1. That means it is basically, if you consider this point as 0, this is 0.5 and it is 1. So whenever the Vmax value is basically decreasing, that time we are actually shifting upward in case of y-axis. So the new Vmax will be this point and the graph should be like this, right? So this is in case of uncompetitive inhibition. Now if we will have to talk about the non-competitive inhibition, then you can see that again we will have to draw the same graph with normal representation. And in case of uncompetitive inhibition, you can see that km value remains unchanged. Km value remains unchanged and Vmax value will get decreased, right? So as km remains unchanged, that means we will not have to talk, we will not have to think about the km. So this is the minus 1 by km. New km will also present over here, but Vmax value is decreasing. Vmax value is decreasing, that means it will shift upward in case of y-axis. It will shift upward. Let's suppose this is the new Vmax value. So this will be the value of the 1 by Vmax and the graphical representation will be like this. So this is the value of the new 1 by Vmax and this is the value of the previous one. So this is all about the competitive, uncompetitive and non-competitive inhibition. Remaining inhibition, that is the mixed inhibition, you will have to draw by yourself so that you can also analyze whether you learn this topic or not. After analyzing yourself, you should have to mention your comments, your valuable comments of it. I will also able to upload such type of video in the future lecture as well. So thank you everyone for this video, and obviously if you will have to know more and more topics related to the enzyme, so you can mention the topic name and I will try my best to upload